Have you guys ever wondered what stocks, bonds, and ETFs mean?
Well, if you don't know what they mean, you probably must be feeling really stupid right now.
Now what the hell?
Or not. I don't know, I don't read your mind. But your boy SM got you covered. Today, I'm going to be telling you all about what all of these terms mean. And by the end of this video, you will learn how to be financially free and know what all of these terms mean.
Financial markets are essentially securities that are being traded in a marketplace. This is very vital for the smooth operation of capitalistic economies. Examples of financial markets include the stock market, the bond market, or even commodities markets where physical goods are being exchanged. The important thing to understand about financial markets is that it is an exchange of something between people. It can be between perhaps 5 people or 5 million people, which are like examples of the stock market, where it's between millions of people.
Swag like Ohio, down in Ohio. Swag.
Stocks, my favorite. But what exactly are stocks? Well, the official term for stocks is stocks are shares of ownership of a company. So a company's net worth is issued in the form of stocks. So in simple terms, when you buy a stock, you own a small piece of that company. When you own stocks of a specific company, you also have voting rights in those companies. So shareholder meetings, you'll be able to be part of those. But the main reason why people invest in stocks is to make a return on their investment. But how do you actually buy stocks? Well, you can either open a trading account on your bank or you can use trading apps on your phone. But how exactly does this buying and selling of stocks works? Well, you can buy or sell stocks as long as there's another person willing to buy or sell the stocks that you're wanting to buy or sell. So if I want to buy Apple stocks, as long as there's another person willing to sell Apple stocks, that works. But remember, when you're buying stocks, you might be thinking you're buying it from the actual company, but no. Usually the case is you're buying the stocks from another person who is selling that stock. So the first way and most common way people make money through stocks is through something called stock appreciation. But before I can talk about how stock appreciation works, we need to look at stock price. So stock price is the value at which someone can buy or sell a stock. Let's say an Apple stock is worth $140. So if I want to buy one Apple stock, I need to pay $140. But this stock price changes throughout the day, and it can either go up and it can go down. But what makes that change? Well, it is all linked to the supply and demand of the stock. If there is a high demand for a specific stock, more people are willing to buy that stock, which means that the stock price will increase. Think of like an auction. I have a beautiful painting, and if more people are bidding on that price, on that specific painting, they're willing to pay a higher price because more people are willing to bid for it. Similarly, if more people are willing to buy a stock, that means the stock price increases, it goes up. However, if more people want to sell a stock, there's going to be more supply than the demand, and that means the stock price goes down. So essentially what you need to know is that if more people want to buy a stock, the stock price goes up. But if more people sell the stock, that means the stock price goes down. What influences people's choices to buy or sell stocks? Well, these are some factors, but not all factors. Company news and performance. How is the company doing? The management. Do they like the management of the company? Are they making good results, like quarterly results? Are they expected to be making a lot of money or not? Industry performance. How's that general industry doing? For example, if I look at the tech industry, if the tech industry is generally doing very well, it means that there's going to be a good chance that Apple would be doing really well. Or economic outlook. This looks at interest rates, inflation. These all can affect the overall supply and demand of a stock. So now back to how you can make money through stock appreciation. What you want to buy a stock price at a lower price and then sell it at a higher price. So let's say I have an Apple stock I buy it at $100, and then after a couple of days it goes up to $110, $105. Now if I sell it, I make a $5 profit. So what you hope is that when you buy your stock, you hope that it has lower value than when you sell your stock. The second way to making stocks is through something called dividends. This is where profits that the companies make, they give it back to their shareholders. What do I mean by this? So let's look at Microsoft. You all know Microsoft, hopefully, please do. So let's say Microsoft, they made a lot of profits. They gave me every year, for every stock that I own, they give me $1 as a dividend. So if I were to own 100 stocks, that means they would be giving me $100 per year in dividends. But why exactly do companies give dividends in the first place? Well, the main reason why is it is done to incentivize shareholders to keep their stocks and not sell it. As if you keep the stock price ends up increasing. Whereas if they decide to sell their stock, then their stock price goes down. ETFs stand for exchange traded funds, and essentially what it is I just talked about stocks, and you have these multiple stocks. You can group them into one thing, and that is considered an ETF. And this ETF, which are the bunch of stocks grouped together, is also traded on the stock market. Let us say I have my portfolio. My name is Sachin, if you didn't know, by the way. In my portfolio, I own 10 Apple stocks, 10 Microsoft stocks, and 10 Google stocks. This is my portfolio. Now say you, the person watching, wants to invest in my portfolio. Well, you can. And then you just invest in this called Sachin's portfolio. You physically invest in that. This shows the concept of an ETF. The ETF is, in this case, Sachin's portfolio. But Sachin's portfolio consists of multiple different assets. And then this ETF, Sachin's portfolio, is publicly traded in the market. If you want to look at a real-life example, the most popular real-life example is actually something called the S&P 500. And what the S&P 500 stands for, it is the 500 largest companies traded on the stock market in the US. And all of that is in the S&P 500. And you can invest in this directly in the market. The positives about ETFs is that it is much more safe when compared to the stock market. Therefore, if you would lose, for example, money, you wouldn't be losing as much as when compared to investing into an individual stock. However, this also causes downsides, as in the stock market, you'd be able to maximize your gains as well. Even though you have larger losses, you also have larger gains. Whereas in the ETFs, it's not like that because you're investing in multiple different things. So if one thing goes up a lot, it will be brought down by the other things. Therefore, you wouldn't be making as much as when compared to investing in that particular stock itself. Bonds is a loan given from an investor to a company or government. And in return, the company or government gives them an interest rate each year. And then in the end, they get back their loan that they've given. But let's look at a closer look at the specifics of a bond. So there are the three most important details of a bond is, first of all, the face value, which is the initial loan given from the investor to a specific entity. Then we have the maturity date, which is after how many years is that entity gonna pay back the loan that the investor has given. And then the third thing is the interest/coupon rate. And this is how much money is the entity gonna pay the investor in addition to giving back the initial loan given. Let us look at an example. There is a bond for $100, okay? And the maturity date is 10 years. And there's going to be an interest rate of 5%. If you look at this example, after 10 years, we get $5 every year. So after 10 years, we would be making $50 from interest rates. Now, they can either spread that out over paying $5 each year, or at the end of the 10 years, they're going to pay you the $50. In the end, after 10 years, I have made $50 in profit, and the entity will pay me back my initial loan. So I've made a $50 profit. And bonds compared to stocks are actually much safer, as the bond market is much more predictable. However, you might be asking, that sounds like free money. Where's the risk? The main risk of bonds is something called default risk, where the entity you've loaned your money to does not pay back your principal investment. And this can be because they become bankrupt. But this risk also determines the interest rates you get for a bond. If the entity that you are loaning the money to has a high chance of going bankrupt, that means they'll try and compensate for that by giving you a higher interest rate. However, if the money you're loaning to an entity that is very safe and can definitely pay back your principal investment, they're going to be giving you a lower interest rate. An example of a very safe entity would be a government, as it's much harder for governments to become bankrupt. However, there can be companies which are like startups, they have a high default risk because they have a higher chance of becoming broke. How do we determine the risk of a bond? Well, first of all, they're credit rating agencies which give a rating for the risk of a bond. And they look at factors such as, but not only, nature of the issuer's debt, the reliability of cash flow for that entity, the ability for the entity to be able to pay interest rates, and their entity management. However, these ratings that credit agencies give are not always accurate, so make sure that when investing in bonds, you also do a lot of research on the entity that you're giving the bond to be able to properly assess the risk of that bond. The second risk with bonds is something called interest rate risk. What this means is that in bonds, we have something called the interest rate. Every year, you get paid a certain percentage per year. The entity that you've loaned your money to pays it to you. But let's say you have a maturity date of 10 years. You're locking yourself for a very long time. So if they promise for maybe like an interest rate of 2% for 10 years, but then let's say 2 years into your bond, you see an entity which gives like interest rates at like 5%, or like the general interest rate of bonds increased from 2% generally to 5%, you're missing out. Here I'll just give you my personal experience with all of this. So I'm 15 years old. I first started investing when I was 9 years old, so that was 6 years ago. And so far, I've only invested in stocks. And this is also for a particular reason. This is because from what I talked about, like stocks, bonds, and ETFs, stocks give the highest returns, but you have the highest risk. But because I'm young, I can afford to take more risks. Because I can afford to take more risks, I might as well look for getting a higher reward. Therefore, I decide to go into stocks because if I play it right, I can make much more when compared to bonds and ETFs. As for my investment strategy, I generally buy stocks and then hold them for a very long time. So like 20 plus years. Although I could do short-term trading, which is like buying and selling stocks constantly, it's very stressful and it requires a lot of time. And I'm not in the state of mind where I can currently do that. Whereas long-term trading, it doesn't require like looking at the stock market like every day, every minute, and it's just much more chill. If there was one advice that I would give to the young people watching, it is invest while you're young. Because the younger you invest, the more time you have for your stocks to appreciate. And stocks don't work in a linear way. They're actually exponential, and the longer time you have to let your stocks appreciate, in the end, your stocks, the value each year will become even more and more as it works in a compound way. And if you want to try this, I'll put a link below to a compound interest calculator where you can put predicted growth each year, and you can put it for like 10 years and then 20 years and see the difference it makes by investing in it for 20 years rather than just 10 years.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave a like and smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.